GEM International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. GEM International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of InkResearch.ca, Canada's first online financial news and research service, providing insider news and knowledge to investors. Ted is speaking to us from Japan. Welcome back to our New Year's edition, Ted.
Well, Happy New Year to you and your listeners, Jim.
It could be a good new year for some people, although we've had signs and warnings that the Canadian economy may not do that well in the new year. Will it?
Well, look, first of all, there's been a couple of hit pieces done on the Canadian economy that I've read, even while I'm in Japan, bemoaning a drop in the inflation rate, for example. I read this on Bloomberg News. Anytime you read a story basically gauging the economy's performance based off of its inflation rate, completely ignore it. It has absolutely no relevance in a modern age in terms of our inflation rate. All it tells you is whether the central bankers are reaching their beloved 2% consumer price inflation goal. Now, I'm back in Japan here. I haven't been here for a year, so it gives me a nice look at the consumer prices. Everyone keeps spreading about Japan, how they're in a big deflation. Well, I can tell you that the food prices in Japan are going up. They're up significantly since I was here a year ago. But, the Bank of Japan takes those out of consideration because, they think they're too volatile. Well, that's fine for the Bank of Japan and the Bank of Canada, which I believe now has 3 inflation gauges that strip out food. Some of them, sometimes they strip them out, sometimes they don't. But in any event, the fact of the matter is that in an age where we've got rapid technological advance, where we've got a society that's aging, the notion that you need inflation to boost growth is absolutely ridiculous. Yes, there are periods of time when you can have, so-called bad deflation, but usually that takes place during a rigid exchange rate regimes where you've got some kind of price setting in the economy. Right? Okay, that's a bit of a ramble, but the fact of the matter is, historically, you can have technologically advanced periods with falling prices. The economy booms. It's called a deflationary boom. Just because you have inflation, it doesn't mean your economy is doing great. It doesn't mean and if inflation's at 1.2% instead of 2%, doesn't mean we're in a crisis. We're not in a crisis in Canada, and I think you just have to look at the stock market to see that. 2016, it's had its ups and downs depending on what you're focusing on. We've lost a lot of celebrities and people in the scientific community, some pioneers. But, for the Canadian market, it's been a great year. The Canadian Insider Index, which tracks 50 stocks preferred by insiders on the Toronto Stock Exchange, as of the day before New Year's Eve, it's up on a total return basis over 20%. And that's worked out pretty well. It's regained more than what it lost. It was down 4% in 2015, but it's up 20% this year. Things have been improving in the resource area as far as investors are concerned, and I think you're going to see a surprise in the Canadian economy next year. So don't pay attention to all these doomsday sayers, especially if you read about Canada's so-called low inflation rate. That is absolutely unremarkable in terms of its ability to predict whether we have a period of prosperity or not. What people should be more concerned about are stupid political mistakes and a mistake by the Bank of Canada that is probably ongoing at this point, where it's continuing to try and prop up the Canadian housing market. At the same time, talk about the dangers of debt. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, Jim. It's like it's 6 o'clock in the morning. The bartender's still pouring the drinks as at happy hour prices, and the bartender's warning people not to go home and drive drunk. This is what we've got essentially from the central bank in this country, and that's one of the biggest dangers. And as I mentioned, having bad public policy decisions are also big dangers. So be on the lookout for what we've got coming down the pipe here in British Columbia. We have an election, and I'm a little concerned that the election is going to kind of meander into an election on I would say non-economic issues. Let's put it that way. Yes, housing will probably be an issue. It shouldn't be a provincial issue at this point, in the sense that there's very little the provincial government can do except make a mess of things at this point. They brought in the foreign tax. There's very little more that they should be doing on this file. It's really a federal problem. And, and when you have the Bank of Canada refusing to raise interest rates into a clear housing boom, then there's very little the provincial government can do to address that issue. So, but overall, the Western Canadian economy is going to surprise on the upside, based what we're seeing, how our insider signals are pointing. We're seeing continued insider buying in the energy sector. Where that's going to come as a shock to environmentalists. But yes, the energy sector is back, and it's the old-fashioned energy sector. The mining sector, another area that environmentalists hate, it's had a pause here in the current month and current quarter, but insiders have been buying as stock prices have been stagnating. So if the American economy is able to kind of chug along here and keep growing, I expect we'll have a pretty good year economically in Canada in 2017.
Going back to the issue of housing, what's your opinion of the BC government offering $37,500 interest-free to new home buyers? Well,
there's a lot of debate whether it's actually going to have much of an impact or not. The intent, if the intention is fulfilled, and that is what I mean by that. If it actually does have an impact, it'll be inflationary and will likely benefit the developers and the home sellers. I'm not quite sure exactly the calculus about why the provincial government did this. They've identified maybe 42,000 people who will take the money. Unfortunately, it's not going to help them if they take it. It's going to help the sellers. So. I'm scratching my head over that one, and there are much better ways that the provincial government, could have tackled the issue. The other reason why I'm a little surprised that they had got back on track, in my view, on the housing file, and now it's just given the NDP something else to talk about. And the NDP doesn't have that much to talk about aside from housing and perhaps one or two other areas, but in terms of broad-based issues that can really get the public's attention, I think the big risk for the BC Liberals in the election is the housing file, and that's of their own making at this point, unfortunately for them, and also political fundraising, and part of that's going to be federally driven because Justin Trudeau just can't seem to get on top of this fundraising problem that the federal Liberals have in terms of the perception that that they've been giving preferred access, and that's going to keep unless Justin Trudeau can shut it down quickly, and he's shown no ability to do that. That issue could hang over the BC election, and a lot of it would be because of what people are hearing about in Ottawa. So. There are some headwinds that the BC Liberals are going to have to confront, and the fact of the matter is NDP economic policy won't be a challenge for the BC Liberals because the NDP economic policy is usually pretty bad, and I don't suspect it's going to be any better this time around. What the BC NDP are hoping for is that they can use those, the fundraising and the housing as issues that motivate people to change government. Now the BC Liberals have a chance here to kind of regain the agenda, the economic agenda, on a number of fronts, but primarily tax reform. That we've seen the Wynne government in Ontario adopt cap and trade for the climate change initiative in Ontario, and this is going to turn out to be just another job killer in Ontario, mainly because it's not going to be revenue neutral. They're going to take the money and spend it, and so the big advantage that BC has is that we do have a revenue neutral carbon tax in place, and it would allow the BC government to further reduce personal and potentially corporate income taxes, and they could really stoke the competitiveness of this province and people I think would be receptive to a well articulated platform on that approach. But time is starting to run short. They'll have to play their cards for their election platform shortly. That they're going to have to get the public's attention on the economy, and so it should be. There is a great opportunity for BC to capture more growth opportunities, especially from those provinces that haven't got it right on the climate action plan. And I would say both Alberta and Ontario have misfired on that. So it's a good opportunity for BC. And in general, though, despite the problems that we're going to see, I think from Ontario with its mishandling of the climate file and other files, the Canadian economy should do okay. Now, there are going to be pockets of humor, I think, in the new year too. I've seen a recent story out of Ottawa that Navdeep Bains, the Minister of Innovation, is going to start using government procurement, to boost startups. And I don't know, Jim, I don't know if you've ever had the privilege of trying to bid on a government contract. I personally haven't, but in my early days in government, I was on the other end of dealing with people who were trying to sell to the Canadian government. And I can tell you that the last place any startup is going to be able to look to for assistance is, selling things to the federal government. I mean, it is so bureaucratic. It is so full of red tape. And it is so biased towards existing players and consultants. It is just laughable that you've got a Minister of Innovation even suggesting this. I mean, this is the same government, Jim, that is handing over hundreds of millions in new taxpayer dollars to the CBC. Now, how many startups has the CBC ever funded and ever got off the ground? I can tell you, in recent memory, they've started one, and that's the Kevin O'Leary initiative to run for the leadership of the Conservative Party. I mean, that's the only startup the CBC has funded recently. And and the irony is, you're going to have Kevin O'Leary potentially running for the Conservative Party on a free market. On this, we've got to have a smaller government. And here's a guy who was basically on use the CBC as a way to promote his own brand and his own agenda, and good for him that he was able to take advantage of that. But it is a bit ironic that he is trying to kind of ride on the bootstraps of Donald Trump, yet it was a public broadcaster that helped boost his career into politics.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ted Dixon. Ted, what do you think will be the highlights for the Canadian economy in the new year? Will high tech and biotech be bright lights?
I think there's always going to be kind of a slow improvement in those areas because we've got such a skilled labor force, but it won't grab the headlines, and it certainly won't be propelled to the forefront by any government policies that I've heard so far. You're going to see the surprising return of Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba to lead the Canadian economy, and part of that will be due to resources, and part of it will be due to the tax regimes in place in those provinces that are relatively competitive compared to Ontario. So we're gonna see the old Canadian economy regain leadership, and it will be, though it won't. The mainstream media in Canada will not recognize this until after the fact. So the time, for investors out there, we've had a nice pullback in mining stocks. You have to have the right risk tolerance for mining stocks. So if you don't like volatility and want to be able to sleep at night, maybe mining stocks aren't for you. But there are other stocks that do offer value still in the Canadian market. They're harder to find after a good year that we've had. But good old-fashioned value investing, companies that make things will outperform these gadgets that financial engineers have come up with, such as levered loans and all these bond proxies to eke out another 1 or 2% in yield. You're going to have old-fashioned companies, grocery stores. You're going to have, retail stores, car makers, auto parts makers. Companies that make things, pull things out of the ground, put things together. That's where you can make some money in 2017. Where you probably won't make a lot of money is in these gadgets, in these financially engineered gadgets. That was the QE, Fed, Bank of Canada story. Yes, we still have the Bank of Canada in emergency mode, Jim. We're still on the output gap hasn't closed. I keep hearing this from Stephen Polo's, that output gap, if only we could close it, everything would be great. To think that you can have an economy-wide output gap is ridiculous to start with. But that's another story that you could spend a whole show on. The fact of the matter is, unless we get a big surprise on the downside in commodity prices, I think you're going to see a return of the old Canadian economy. We saw the allocation in the Canadian Insider Index move in that direction to more energy stocks, industrial mining stocks. Back in November, and so far so good. We seem to be on track for a decent 2017. Could things derail it? Absolutely, but looks like we'll have improved U.S.-Russian relations after January 20th. That'll help stabilize some investment in the oil patch in Russia. Should anyways, if we make some progress there. But then the wild card becomes China. Then you've got a question mark about where does that leave China in the mix. So there's always uncertainty. There's always risks that can pop up. But in general, I guess what I'm looking forward to, one of the things I'm looking forward to is a debate between Kelly Leitch and Kevin O'Leary on the role of the CBC in the Conservative Party. We'll see if Mr. O'Leary is able to, in English and French, discuss the role of CBC, and whether he's going to agree with Kelly Leitch that it should be wound down, and given his past association with that agency. I'm looking forward to that immensely. Now, on a serious note, I think the Conservatives also have to figure out where they stand on the carbon plan, and you've got two camps. You've got the O'Leary Leach camp, who want to continue to subsidize the energy industry by allowing them to emit greenhouse gases unpriced. And you've got the other group. You've got a large group of Conservatives now that favor carbon pricing, including the leader of the Ontario Conservatives, and Michael Chong is running for the Conservative leadership party leadership. So it'll be interesting to see how the Conservatives handle this issue, and maybe we'll get some substantive policy debate in the BC election. I would really like to see us focus on tax reform. I don't think we're going to get there. And agency reforming TransLink, reforming BC Hydro. Unfortunately, unless the BC Liberals can kind of really seize the agenda here, I think they're going to be playing defense and hope that the people just decide it's not worth going for the NDP's economic policies, and that's I'm afraid that's kind of the decision we'll have to make here in BC in May of this year, of 2017.
Well, in the last election, I thought it was progressive that NDP leader Adrian Dix went and met with 400 business leaders, and then the second the election was declared, Carol James came out with her usual "eat the rich" speech.
Well, the problem with the NDP is that they don't seem to be able to adapt their policies to a broad-based winning coalition. They've got a few check boxes that they're able to tick off. Public sector unions, they've got that vote sewed up, but now they don't know how to handle the Green Party, and they certainly don't know how to handle the private sector, and so they've got some real challenges. Their only opening here is to run on housing and some on ethical issues. But the NDP have their favorites and the voters know that you've got a choice between the BC Liberals and the NDP, and when it comes down to playing favorites, both there's perceptions that stick with both parties. So it's going to be a tough road for the NDP, and the BC Liberals though should just be careful that they don't give too wide of an opening for the opposition, because they may be surprised that they're able to jump through it this time, and if they can't really afford another BC loan housing partnership or whatever that program is called. They can't afford to drop the ball like that again. They need to really focus on their strength, and that should be taxes and tax reform, and that would get the public's focus off of these other issues and into something that that our children could benefit from, as opposed to just playing one special interest group off another, which is what I'm afraid this next election is going to boil down to. But one can hope for the better, and that we're able to talk about more substantive issues than that.
Ted, thank you so much for all the help you've given us over the year.
Well, it's been a very interesting year, and we'll look forward to 2017, and wish you and your listeners a prosperous and healthy new year. Thank you.
Guest has been Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of IncResearch.ca, his website, CanadianInsider.com. If you have any questions for our show, you can email us at info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Happy New Year.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.